Hi. All right. So, on this episode of Reading from the Parinama Method, we are in the Techniques and Exercises, page 206, believe it or not. It is, you know, and we're going to read about setting up. And by setting up, it's this is like before the sections on listening and validation, speaking, and even so the next after that is elevator pitch, and so one of the things that I was just when I was flipping through and thinking about this, and I actually pulled down my very highly ha yeah, there's even a thing I have in here, I'll show you, of Eastern Body, Western Mind, by the way. Um, oh, that's interesting. Is this, which I created, which is the markings for that matches the chapter numbers in the audiobook to the page number, because the audiobook, chapters are not matched with the actual chapters of the book, and not I've read the book and listened to the audiobook so many times. I was just thinking too, it came up yesterday that I wanted it's been a while, it's probably been about a year or so since I, like, dipped into this, and that I really want to, and so I was reading a little bit before I jumped on in this section, and, like, I just realizing how much I really like, feel a really strong connection to this book, like, it feels really good to read it. And also just, it's kind of, like, one of the things I noticed, it's funny too because it's like there's even notes in here, like chapter 19, 2012, which is like in some of the sections, there's stuff that I kind of had listened to enough that I was like, yeah, this isn't really on the same channel of where I'm going. Um, because there's like some stuff that is less kind of, I don't know, interesting to me or whatever, or I don't know what, like, but reading it and yeah, like chakra 5 is vibrating with expression. Um, and it's actually funny, I was like flipping through it looking for because there's stuff that in this techniques and exercises that, I was noticing that this is really influenced by my professional life. There's certain sections that are really influenced and actually similar to what Anodea Judith told me about her process of, writing Eastern Body, Western Mind, was that the clients she worked with as a therapist were informing exactly what she was writing when it came up. I'm not a therapist, but as a executive leader, that a lot and a mentor and advisor, that in like professional settings, I guess, with business mentor and advisor, which also turns out to be like advising people and being people. The right, I mean, really, like, everything is advising people about being people. It's, like, just what the chosen medium. Um, is so much of this is impacted by that, and, even I think to a certain extent, at the time, my own capacity to advise people with the Fifth Hub was very much related to my own experiences to date, and I'm finding that in this cycle that I'm doing right now, along with y'all, is that my own practice is having, an like, a ascension or an elevation, and, yeah, maybe that's kind of a weird way to put that's relative, but just the things that I'm noticing are coming forward when I'm not focused in the context of my professional life with it, that is, changing it. But I still think these are helpful. I did find though, because there's a couple things that didn't make the final cut, and it had to do with, um, what's it called? like mantra, I think we actually, let's see, like this stays very practical for the most part. There's some stuff that's a little like doopy-doo. Yeah, there's stuff. So there's actual like vibrational sounds that can be made that match, that are match the charging and the discharging of the hubs, or specifically the chakras, because these are as they relate to being chakras. So I didn't put that in here. It didn't match my sense of practicality with this, but maybe at some point that comes up, because I did find that on a personal level to be interesting, like um, the other thing too, like, yeah, let's see, what am I trying to get at? Yeah, so this is practical, and I do still stand by this. I do still stand by that, um, that one of like, the primary thing I was doing for Eastern Body, Western Mind, because I don't know if it's like this. I think it's either in the, thank you notes at the end of the book. But I remember while I was, to the point of the Toni Morrison quotes, like if there's a book that you need to read that hasn't been written, that you have to write it. When I found Eastern Body, Western Mind, I remember feeling like, wait, this is the book. This is the book. This is the book I need. And feeling this, like many people do with it, feeling it's like my book's almost like fan fiction of Eastern Body, Western Mind. It's like, except there's no S&M. It's Twilight, 50 Shades of Grey joke. And I felt very, like, when I was reading it, it was like it really was connecting the dots about the kind of missing parts in the framework of the different components of myself, and it was making sense of like, oh, this is a thing. And but it's very well, it's new age, and it's not like, so I don't really want to be saying this as a point of criticism, but just as an observation. It like really has like some organization and structural things in terms of making it sort of hard to execute on. And even I mean, it's just like a lot of good information that's like pretty well organized. But even the stuff like it's like restoring the lotus is one of the, I think that's what would be sort of the, like, similar to techniques and exercises. And her terms, so I use shrinking and inflating, and I use it in a different context than she uses. Mine is that you have a dynamic expression of the hub that gets stuck in one form of its expression as a strategy to guard against the actual interruptions and stressors that occur. Uh, you know, she has excess and deficiency, very similar in terms of like the initial notion, but contextually, I've kind of a different take on it, or we do it here. But yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful book. She does stuff about the shape of the body, which I stayed away from. Character structure that has to do with the Andrew Lowen stuff, or Alexander Lowen. And but I mean, it's a big book. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's just like, it's really great. It's really great. I really love it. But I will say that one of the things is that, and instead of shadows, she just calls it like demons. I think, is that what it is? I forget. I think if I've read it this many times. But there's just a lot of stuff. I mean, like, you see how much I've read it. I've like underlined almost everything in it. But there's a lot of like the Sanskrit stuff and like mythological stuff, and I mean, it really, it's a thing. But for me, the practicality of it was the part that was where I was like, there's just it's like there's something that's not fully connecting for me, which was like, how does this connect with a actual conventional life lived in the real world? Because even and I hesitate to say this because I hesitate to say this because I it's a I'm trying to think, it's is it n like, it see, I'm having a hard time saying this because I don't mean it as a criticism, I mean it as a reflection of my experience relative to myself and who I am, is that, in the workshops and in the work that I did with her, I just found that, um, there was a lot of, like, kind of the new age magical thinking stuff, and I guess for me, it was like I'm kind of past these kind of fantasies of trying to use this work to, like, become rich because it was like I've already done that and kind of used these principles, more effectively than the teacher has, and even my ideas of, really like, I felt kind of alone in that, like, in these classes about, uh, where like, what could be done with this? Like, I just felt like I think one of the things was it was so clear to me that this was such a like, this is such a powerful framework, and it was, like, using it for, like, I wanna make my dream home and which is fine. It's fine, you can. It's just very, um ugh, see, I just this is why this is hard to talk about because it's like I don't want anybody who's watching this to feel like, "Wow, if that's what I want, is there something wrong with that?" And also there was just for matching my energy, there was just, like, kind of the sense of well, it's interesting because I think that part of it is, like, the self-actualization part, right now in this cycle, I'm realizing that there's a lot that's happening with that alone. That's in a more subtle plane. I don't know, I loved it. I mean, I don't wanna it's like, I don't wanna be like, I guess the thing is I don't wanna be saying, I loved it, I loved it. I loved working with Anadea. I loved the people that were in the classes. I loved how much I learned from them, but the part, I guess, that still felt like there was something to be done here was that, that people who weren't, like, kind of I'm not gonna talk about it's just for me, there was a sense where I was like, this is kinda similar to a lot of, like, the new agey stuff, like Eckhart Tolle and people where it's like when I'd be reading it, I'd be, like, very in this sense of, like, this is a really nice thing, but in terms of the practical application of it, of connecting it to my life, and making my life work by these principles versus these being vacations of places that I could travel to. And then I had to go back to like the real world where it was like, I wanted this bridge. I wanted this in my real life. I wanted to be able to practice this and experience it as integrated. That's it. And this didn't for me, it didn't like offer that for me. And so, and even in as far as talking about um, let's see, that what I am finding right now is that in practicing this book as a reader right now that we're doing together is my experience with it is like I'm learning a lot about what the experience is to actually practice this in a sense of practicing it, which I didn't know at the beginning of the year, which is what it's like to go through this in the way that like going through it instead of like working through everything and it being kind of a process of writing the book. I knew I had that sense that writing the book was, the beginning of something, and even though it was, like, this demanding in for years and in, multiple different dimensions and directions, and, like, exhausting, it's a lot of work, uh, that it was the beginning of something that at the time would felt like it was gonna be a lot. like, I was exhausted by the notion that's like, "Oh my gosh, this is gonna be a whole other thing." I didn't know, and I won't talk more to it right now, but, um, it's not it's yeah, it wasn't it's turned out different. Um, yeah, yeah. It's a lot more I could talk to, but I won't on that. Yeah. I guess one point okay, like, so the one point that I think is helpful for somebody who's reading and watching along in the process is that when I was done writing the book, that I was astonished, and this was something that felt like, how do I talk about this? That I felt like I had been dropped at in the worst possible state of my life. Like, I felt physically terrible. I felt really lost. A lot of the things that had been, like, vices and, like, comforts and reliefs didn't work anymore. I was I felt hopeless in a sense of being like, well, my old life now doesn't really work anymore, and I don't know what the new life is. And so, like, I guess, yeah, I mean, I want to bring this up because I think it's something people could find themselves in. And I felt very like, I remember it was like, why hast thou forsaken me kind of thing, because I was like, wait, I followed this like sense that was like soul deep about this following this integrity, like writing this book, going through this process, investing in this, and really divesting myself of like the life that it just and it felt like I felt like I was like dropped off in the middle of nowhere. And it was pretty terrible. Like, it was really, I mean, because I guess one of the things I'd thought when I was writing the book was like, "Well, I'm trusting this, it's gonna be this thing, it's gonna be," and this is something in Joseph Campbell's hero's journey that he, like, points to, which is, and we'll talk about it in the next, chapter, is that it's, like, the return after having, like, been in the abyss and, like, fought had the epic battles, that there's no guarantee in terms of what you return to. You bring your gifts that you've created in this kind of other world back into the real world, and there's just no guarantee that it's recognized or met with anything. And I guess one of the things was that I don't know. I don't even think that was so much of what it was. I think one of the other, that it wasn't recognized because it was, that wasn't what was happening. It was more that I was realizing my own capacity to tolerate people's love for it was not there. And so I was getting overwhelmed. So my own practice needed, and my own expansion was going to have to grow in order for me to be able to like hold the container, which is, what I'm doing right now, for this work. And so I guess, to, like, bring this back to something that could be worth worthwhile for a view, like, someone watching this and someone who's reading this and doing this process, is that happens. This kind of sense of, like, "Wait, this just made things a lot worse." I mean, I remember because I live in downtown Boston, is I just would be, like, walking around like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And the worst part of it was that I was like, "Look, I did the thing." Like, there's always this sense that's like, "What? There's this thing I'm not doing that I could be doing, that if I did that, it would set me free." I was like, "I did the thing. I did the thing. I know what it like, I don't have any question about that." Like, I followed that thing that it's like, and that I was like, "Wait, so this does this," and that made me feel very, like, this kind of thing of like very disoriented in terms of feeling lost in a way that was like more lost than lost, because it's like, wow, if that directionality is not something that is like the ultimate divining rod, like where does that leave me? Like that sense of purpose, of my naturally arising organic sense of purpose. I mean, I was kind of like, that's what this whole thing is about. Um, and it was hard because there was a period of, there were a couple months early in the year where I thought, God, this is really terrible. I wrote this book about this thing, and now I'm like I'm worse than I've ever been in my life. It's like, how, but how? Like how? Um and it was a crisis. It was the first time I've ever actually had a crisis in the sense of like really being like, oh my God. So the reason I'm bringing this up is I knew it at the time, even, and it didn't help. So maybe this doesn't help either. But it's always darkest before the dawn. And one thing that luckily I know, and I knew this from business, I knew this from, building teams and companies, is that before before something like grows, there's this thing that happens. And I don't know, and it's an energetic quality that it's like, and this is before, so I'm using this as like before companies, like when I'm building like a revenue organization, there's this thing that happens where there's this kind of contraction of hopelessness, where it's like, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. And like part of being a leader is like in the face of that, like holding strong and being like we keep, and feeling it yourself, being like, this is the right direction. That there's this contraction. I can even see, I have this bank of memories of seeing faces and being in meetings and trying to hold the shit together while people are feeling um hopeless, like this really, like we just hit a snag or there's a bump in the road. And for growth companies, the kind of stuff that I've done historically, it's like a huge part of the experience is that you just, things that you don't expect wind up coming up, and it's like, oh, this is an issue for whether we can succeed or not. And there's this like contraction, and before there's this like really big boom. And every time, and the only thing that was of like kind of any, like what I'd call um like provided some sense of like, yeah, I do know this, but I only knew it. And it was like, and the feelings were stronger. I knew that I'm like, when it feels like this, it's like about to like become a thing, that it's about to expand into something extraordinary. Like there's this like like kind of thing, and a big like firework or flower or whatever. And I knew it. And the thing, I've always known that it's dark, always darkest before the dawn. I've always known that. And I've always known that it's something we forget every single time. I forget every time, and I'll say it to myself and I still don't believe it. It is like absolutely like part of the thing, I think, is like the test of faith, is that like we lose the, like all of the tools we have. It's like we just have to have that kind of thing of being able to put one foot in front of the other and conceptually know to keep walking. But it's like that it's like everything is kind of like, it's dark night of the soul stuff. So yeah. So, and I want to say that it's like, yes, absolutely. In terms of like having felt that, the turnaround on it was like 24 hours, like when I had the next kind of like opening and revelation about just kind of the next opening, and that it continues to happen. It continues to happen. And one of the things I really, really understand And this might be TMI here for Parinama, is like right now I am so fucking happy, like in terms of like the sense of like what it's like to live inside of my life. Um, you know, like everything like that, like, and it's so there's kind of there's a minor issue right now about my relationship with like wanting to convince people to do this, because I'm kind of like, look, if you want it, you want it. I'm not gonna force it. I don't need anything from you. Like, I don't need anything from you in the sense that I knew before to need things from you. Like, that's, that was the thing that actually existed until like, that's softening, which is like, yeah, this isn't, the kind of consumer product thing here. And so the showing up for this has like a very different form. And one of the things I have to figure out is really like, yeah, how do I do that? But anyway, point being, it's always darkest before the dawn. And it's like, feels to me like it's worth talking about that a little bit here. Because the thing about like everything just got a lot worse, like is a thing. Um, and it was really hard. It was really hard. It was really sad. Yeah. It's not sad anymore. So we'll talk about some of this stuff some more down the road if you want to. Any questions, like in the comments, any questions I'll answer. It's only so far, like I get the sense when I'm talking about this stuff about like kind of when to stop talking about the phenomenon of this. Yeah. So we're going to read a little bit today, very short little piece. If you're following along in the book, it's page 206 and it's setting up. We're talking about the setup for communication. So yeah, this is like, so I think the last one was communication, setting up. And one of the things too is I'll say like this is a lot of conceptual stuff for the next couple of pages, but we actually get into some actual like exercising, not just contemplation stuff, some stuff to actually do. So like there's some good stuff, and I might add some more stuff in depending on whether it feels like it's right or not. So anyhow, look at my hair. I was like watching some of not watching them, but I was looking at the thumbnails of some of the earlier videos, and it was like really, maybe for the next chapter, I'll get back into the swing of things, like where it was just like my makeup. My makeup and the lighting was like a lot better. Like this is like air dried hair. Makeup is like, I don't know. Yeah, maybe that's part of the ascension. I'll like reenact the process of, look at that. That's like the natural curvature of my hair. So there's that. I know, maybe I'll put on some music. I need to figure out, like sometimes when I listen to other people's lives, they have music and I'm like, that is like, I like that. But I think it needs to be the right music at like exactly the right volume. Sometimes it's a little too loud. Anyway, enough of my chit chat. Okay, so setting up. Ready or not. Okay, so containing a conversation helps to reduce anxiety and overwhelm while it creates connections and grows a relationship. Containment begins with understanding the purpose of the discussion. Start by considering a reasonable outcome, such as getting contact information, setting the next date, or simply making the other person feel validated, then make it something that can be reasonably determined. When someone comes to you with a problem, relationship educator Kate Kenfield suggests asking, do you want empathy or a strategy? Large-scale surveys show that most people, above about 70%, want to be heard, and the minority want advice, about 30%. So this is pointing to something that is related to me being good at business. Um, that there's two, I mean, I think there's two things in here, like before I get into that, which is the Kate Kenfield asking, like, do you want me, like, I think, do you want empathy? Empathy might be a little too loaded of a word, but it's like, do you want like space to to talk, and do you want me to like just listen, or do you want me to give, to offer up a strategy and help you think about how to solve this, and let the person kind of, I think, I don't know why, for some reason, like, that just might be me seeing the word empathy. Yeah, I know why. I guess I'm not going to speak to it. It's definitely gendered. Boo. But yeah, is offering that and knowing that, and this is hard. I will tell you, this is something that, even though I think I'm, or I know I'm better, I'm better. It's like I'm out of, I'm not even gonna qualify. Like, I'm not, it's like, I don't know. Anyway, but the like studies show that most people, like 70% want to be heard, and the minority, want the advice, or the solution. I think honestly, like, I feel like that, I don't know if that's the Kate Kenfield or if that's the Nedra Coab, who wrote, Set Boundaries, like Find Freedom. Definitely follow her on Instagram. Great Instagram content. Um, Great book. Read the book. It's really good. But anyway. Okay. So, but what I'm going to talk about is setting up, which is that in terms of like effective communication. Now, I'm really good at ineffective communication as well. I can talk the fucking paint off a barn, and I can be like really impatient because something isn't interesting to me. So, so it's like I override it. Lot like that, like part of the thing for me is like, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, where I want stuff to be, someone, yeah, I've gotten some really, yeah. Yeah, yeah, I'm trying to think of a way to put it, but yeah, so, I mean, there's that, but the thing is, in terms of, like, what I'd consider, like, being effective in getting outcomes out of communication, is just bringing in a little consciousness about the purpose of, like, what a good outcome of the conversation looks like. So, if it's hanging out with friends, it's just like, "Hey, I just wanna feel more connected." Like, just bring some consciousness into it. So, just bring some consciousness to an outcome to say, like, I just want this person to feel how much I love them, you know? Or it's like, I wanna make sure they understand this about how I feel about this thing. Or, when it comes to business, um, I want to move the ball forward and get a next meeting, or I wanna get an introduction, or I wanna get a, you know, agreement on this, or I wanna, being very, like, getting some clarity around what the purpose of the communication is. And this is something where it's like, you don't have to do this every time. It's like, it's not this thing like, "Oh, here's another thing I don't do well." Which is like, Here's another thing. Here's another tool that I'm not using every single time. It's just having it as something where it's like, if you are going to a lunch, if you are going to a family function, if you are going somewhere that you're nervous about about the interaction, is to like one of the things that let's just say that's where you use this is that you're nervous about like I only have this much time or this is a loaded situation or whatever. um that you say like when I leave, good will look like this. Good will look like I've protected my peace and I didn't get activated. Good will look like um yeah, let's just say good will look like I've protected my peace and I didn't get activated. So one of the things is like when it's a clear thing, and this is something like I'm gonna like use this in terms of like all manner, is that you just triangulate off of it. You're clear, you're like, okay, this is the thing I'm trying to like my sort of aspiration objective. It's like, am I getting closer or further away from that? And then to like adjust accordingly. So even like I use this in terms of like a business meeting where it's like I know the thing that I'm trying to get done, and if it's like I'm like, "Oh, this is derailing this. We're getting further away from this," is that then I can course correct it instead of just getting taken with whatever like sort of, trade wind blows the conversation or whatever. And even, just like it's kind of like who's in control here of this interaction. And so even with in interactions where it's like, okay, I'm going to be around people that I find really frustrating, is to be like, well, my end result is I want to leave here and not be drained. And so when it's kind of like, oh, I'm getting activated. Okay, that's going against. So I'm going to just course correct and be like, like, and just and make a decision to be like, okay, I'm going to actually like kind of like wind down here. And I'm just going to say, hey, listen, I'm not, this isn't really up for discussion, or I prefer not to talk about this now. Whatever, whatever, whatever. Or even just like creates the plexiglass where you're just like, okay, I'm not going to actually let this person interfere with my like sense of peace. So, okay, that's it on that. And I will say in terms of advancing business deals, this is really important because the fact of the matter is the more sophisticated your partner is, and I'm talking about partner in terms of who you're trying to get a deal done with, it's like one person's in control. One person will always be in more control, and um, the best thing you can do for yourself is get yourself into a position where you bring some consciousness into what you want to get out of a situation. Because if you're like, look, I just want the deal to get done, it's kind of like, well, what's reasonable to get done in this situation? And like, what would like the stepwise process look like to actually complete this? And if I don't understand what that is, this would be a good opportunity to learn what those steps are. This is a surprising, really difficult thing for a lot of people, which is probably why a lot of people aren't particularly great at this, is like having clarity in the directionality. And if you don't know, other folks will be able to very easily like shift things so it's just what they want. Okay, so oh my gosh, it's spoiler alert. Spoiler alert, I just talked about this and that it's like, hey, it's good at least there's consistency in what I wrote about and what I talk about here. Maybe yeah, okay. So in a professional conversation, such as a sales meeting, start with the end in mind. Imagine what a good outcome looks like and use it to steer the conversation. A good result from a meeting is a next step that supports making progress towards the bigger picture. When you start with your purpose as a destination in mind and the conversation begins to go off topic, you can steer it back on course. Sound familiar? Okay? Gosh, wow. Most discussions have a time limit, and it helps to be aware of what it is by asking, "Do we have the full 30 minutes for our conversation?" Or by setting it yourself, saying, "I have to wrap at 3 o'clock, which is about 20 minutes from now. Does that work for you?" This creates containment, and if you're going to run over, ask if this is okay. Being clear about and actually one of the things I'll say is, like, my containment, if you know me in my personal life, is, like, 0. I'll just fucking talk, 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 talk. 0. It's, like, insane. You have a conversation with me, it's like, book your block your calendar. If it's not contained, just have no expectations. I will, like, literally go nuts. But if you know me in business, it's the exact opposite. Like, I'm very controlled about that. So, I mean, look, you can be all things. The Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, hours. If you talk with me on the phone, it's like, notify your family. I don't even like, I just have no control of it if we're just having a free form conversation. But if there is boundary put in, but also for me, like, one of the things when it comes to, like, managing certain, like, dynamics and trying to advance things, I will be like, and even if I run meetings off, like, agendas that are time stamped, and I tend to be, like, very, on that. I don't it's not just window dressing, I, like, run that. So, it's both, so this is another thing. It's, the both and. Okay, so being clear about who you are also supports the containment, not only for other people, but also to remind yourself of who you are in the conversation. For example, "I'm your friend and I'm here to listen," or "I'm your partner and today I need someone who will listen to me." Yeah, there it is. Okay, well, I didn't think this one was gonna be able to take 40 minutes, but then again, yeah, honestly, I feel like how on earth could, like, anyone who's watching these miss that point about the fact that I can, like, yeah, I mean, come on, it's pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious. Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I feel like it's like a very, like, third hub kind of notion too, which is um, like the containment creates the, like, sort of combustion, and that has to do with, like, moving something forward, and the diffuseness is kinda, like, probably the opposite. It's like the opposite. But it kind of is the opposite. It is the opposite when I think about the conversations I have that, like, that quality. I know, it really is. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. Yeah, it just is what it is. Okay, so that is it for today. We did it. We did it. All right. Well, I love you so much. Any comments get answers. Thank you for the interaction. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you. Really appreciate this is something like the appreciation I have really has to do with um I don't know, like knowing something about like this being this kind of like familial comradeship in this and what's possible now that I really am starting, now that I really know. Now that or not really know. Now that I know what's possible, it's like, "Oh my god. This is a thing. This is a thing." Okay. Well, anyway, I'm sending you lots of love and appreciation, and I will see you next time. Bye.